It has been 1 month since the President of the United States falsely tweeted that former President Barack Obama wiretapped him. 1 month later, the White House and the President are still trying to make a lie true. And they're using the President's Twitter account, the White House press briefing podium, and right-wing media to do it. Today, it's a claim that President Obama's former National Security Advisor, Susan Rice, unmasked the names of Trump associates. We will talk about that in detail in just a moment on this very program. And last week, it was a debunked talking point that former Obama administration official Evelyn Farkas admitted spying on the Trump team. She did no such thing. The week before that, it was Representative Devin Nunes' clumsy effort to give the president cover for wiretapping claims. The president said he was vindicated by Nunes. He was not. The Washington Post today calls the latest claims about Susan Rice anatomy of a fake scandal ginned up by right-wing media and Trump. So let us be very clear about this. There is no evidence whatsoever that the Trump team surveilled or was spied on illegally. There is no evidence that backs up the president's original claim. And on this program tonight, we will not insult your intelligence by pretending otherwise, nor will we aid and abet the people who are trying to misinform you, the American people, by creating a diversion. Not going to do it. I want to tell you that we're learning tonight that President Trump spoke briefly with President Vladimir Putin today to express his sympathies to the Russian people in the wake of a terror attack in St. Petersburg. I want to bring in now Michael Isikoff. He's the chief investigative correspondent for Yahoo News, former CIA analyst Neda Bakos, CNN's Jim Sciutto, and the Washington Post Adam Intos. I'm so glad to have all of you on this evening. Jim, I want to start with you because you can bring us the details on this story. President Trump once again sees all of this as vindication for his false wiretap tweets, when it doesn't at all vindicate that. Do they know? Tell us what you're reporting tonight, because I understand that you have been speaking to a person who is close to Ambassador Rice.
That's right. This is the first comment really we have from the Rice camp, in effect, on this allegation. And I'm told in simple terms that the allegation that Ambassador Rice improperly unmasked the identities of Americans is false. And that unmasking is something that happens when you're a senior national security official, whether Democrat or Republican. That's a statement from the Rice camp. Leave that as it be, because I also spoke with former senior U.S. intelligence officials who served both Republican and Democratic administrations, and they say consistently a couple of things. One, unmasking identities in certain circumstances is not unusual, and it's not illegal. Why would you do it? You would do it to get more background on an intelligence report that your briefer brings you. It's legal, and in fact, there are protocols put in place and updated after 9/11 to allow this under certain circumstances. And when you do, it's very well logged. One former senior U.S. intelligence official said it's better logged than Irish baptismal records. A little bit of a joke, but you can't do it in secret. A couple more points on it. One, a senior national security official, whether they are the National Security Advisor, Susan Rice, or anyone, can't do it on their own. They ask the intelligence community to unmask that identity, and it's up to the intelligence community, specifically the NSA, to do so. So they have to decide that it is justified to do that. And finally, how broadly is that information shared, Don? I'm told that when an identity is unmasked, it is between the briefer and that senior national security official. It is not put in a memo, it's not tweeted out, it's not put on the whitehouse.gov website, right? It's between them. Now, there are open questions here. That official could, of course, share that information more broadly within the administration. We don't know what happened in this case. We also don't know what justification was used to unmask in these particular cases. But at least on the issue of unmasking by itself is not leaking. It's not illegal, and I'm told by multiple officials who've served both parties that it is not unusual either.
And masking is not leaking. If you're hearing that talking point, you're being bamboozled there. So, Neda, here's what you tweeted on the Susan Rice story today. You said she was a national security advisor reading a report of foreign officials discussing U.S. persons coming into WH, the White House. This isn't odd or wrong. So explain why it isn't odd or wrong, despite the president calling it, quote, a crooked scheme.
Right, not knowing exactly what's in the report. Let's say there's incidental collection. She's reading something, say, Russian diplomats are discussing incoming administration officials. She has a need to know then, are we going to be vulnerable? Are they going to try to manipulate our government? And this is Tradecraft 101. She has a need to know. So she's able to ask the intelligence community then, can you please unmask this so I can understand the context? And then again, it informs their foreign policy decisions as well.
So I speak as if the President Trump is watching right now. What is he missing about the intel community or willfully ignoring when he is shooting off these tweets?
This doesn't take anything into context as to how this works. This is really, it is Tradecraft 101. When you have a need to know, and especially if you're a national security advisor, you have the right to be able to ask the intelligence community for more information and for more context.
So, Adam, to you now. There is no evidence that President Trump was directly wiretapped or surveilled. There's zero evidence of it. So the more President Trump tries to distract, the more attention this gets. Why keep doing it?
Well, I think, I'm not actually sure why he keeps on doing this. I mean, obviously, the reporting about connections with Russia are distracting from his agenda, and by maybe trying to point to incidental collection cases in which members of his campaign or transition team were unmasked is a way of pointing everyone in a different direction. I really don't fully understand what his motivations are here, except for maybe an attempt to distract. I mean, I do think incidental collection, which is what we're talking about here, is a very legitimate topic for discussion and does warrant attention. There are specific rules that are applied if people are unmasked. If a lawmaker, for example, is unmasked, there has to be a notification to the congressional oversight committees that oversee the intelligence community. So it is a legitimate issue, but it is, as your other guests have said, something that happens probably several times a week. If not more often than that.
In this particular case, so it is a diversion. It is trying to get people to look at something else rather than what the president originally said. Michael, it's good to have you in studio. But I want you to speak to this. I want to play. This is Eric Swalwell, who sits on the House Intelligence Committee. He reacted to this Bloomberg News report today. Watch this.
Just because Susan Rice would have been able to, quote unquote, unmask this information does not mean that anyone else is able to see it. It's often the case that only one individual or someone on their staff sees it. So this isn't a, sent out a reply all to the whole intelligence community where names are being released. It's usually just one person.
What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, no, that's, look, exactly right. And as it goes to motivation, if you remember when this whole tweet storm started, March 4th on a Saturday, just before that, the big issue in Washington that was blowing up in the Trump White House's face was Jeff Sessions. And did he lie to the Senate Judiciary Committee? And, did he have to recuse himself or go further? Did he commit perjury? Did he have to come back before the Senate Judiciary Committee? As soon as President Trump started tweeting about the wiretapping at Trump Tower, that discussion pretty much dropped off the table. So in one sense, it was effective. It diverted public attention from what was the issue du jour at the time.
But didn't he open up an entirely different can of worms now?
He opened up a completely different issue that in some ways is plaguing him even more. Look, I agree with what all the guests have said. There is nothing that has come out, nothing we've learned in any way justifies the wording of those tweets. But there are issues about incidental collection. That was a big issue for civil libertarians in the wake of the Snowden disclosures, that Americans' conversations were being scooped up by the intelligence community, by the NSA, and were being incidentally collected, and what was the procedures by which those were guarded. And we do know in at least one instance, Mike Flynn, it did get publicly disclosed. His conversations with Kislyak became public. Now, that is potentially problematic. It doesn't mean that it isn't worth knowing that Flynn had these conversations. There was good reasons for the Obama White House to want to know if Flynn was undercutting the sanctions that they had just imposed on the Russian government as a result of the hack. But to be a stickler about the rules, it was probably not okay under the rules and perhaps even under the law for that name to be leaked to the public.
But to say they know where that name came from and to connect it to the former national security advisor, it's just...
No, that's a leap that goes beyond the available evidence. Yeah.